Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach, and today we have with us Macy Robison, who is the founder of Uplight Creative. Welcome to the program, Macy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, you're welcome. So give me a little bit of a background of yourself from a career perspective, and then what led you to found Uplight Creative, because most of the time people in business, they've got some experience in a certain field or niche or industry, and then they start noticing opportunities or problems that they can solve, and then that leads them into creating their firm. So love to hear that story from your side.
Absolutely. It's a bit of a long, winding road, to be honest. In college, when I started out, I wanted to be a Broadway performer. So my degree, was in musical theater performance when I started, and then ended up switching universities partway through my career and switched to music education, and got a master's degree in that from Ohio State University, and taught school for several years, taught middle school as a middle school music teacher, choir teacher. Really, really enjoyed that. Felt like I had a chance to make a difference in the class that kids tend to like the most in a time in school and a season in school that's really, really, really tricky for them. But I've always performed and always loved storytelling and having the opportunity to share stories through song and read and all kinds of things like that. So I was teaching school, had my first child, wanted to start to capture his story, I guess, and looked to photography to do that. And I really became interested in it. My dad has a background as a fine artist, and I always wanted to draw, but was terrible at it. And through photography, kind of found a way to capture the picture that was in my brain without the pain of practicing being a terrible artist. I really got much better at photography about the time that he started to crawl away and not want his picture taken anymore. But I was still interested and started practicing on other people. That grew into a business, taking family portraits. And with that, had to develop my own website and my own marketing and learn how to be an entrepreneur and a business owner for the first time. And I, from that, started helping other people with their marketing and their websites and their businesses, and just really grew to love that experience of working with people on their businesses and on their marketing. Worked as a marketing specialist for a while, with an event I actually used to speak for and sing for, and then went out on my own about 2 years ago, specifically to work with an author friend of mine to help her with her website, and realized very quickly that she had really great intellectual property, a really great message to share and things that she was teaching, but she didn't know how to talk about it clearly. She didn't know how to explain it well. And I had come across Donald Miller and StoryBrand in my previous marketing job and had used that to great success to build that event and the marketing for that event, and went to a workshop with her to help her clarify her message and apply that message to her website, and loved it so much I became a StoryBrand certified guide. So I founded Uplight Creative about 2 years ago, and I help authors and creatives and small businesses create a clear message and share it online so their business will grow.
Yeah, it's that intro reminds me of something that I'm sure you've heard many, many times, which is a quote from supposedly Albert Einstein: "If you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself." Exactly. Have you heard that one before?
Yes. And that's one of the things that I love about teaching. I really love learning. I've always loved it. And I'm self-taught, and sometimes that brings a little bit of imposter syndrome. But yeah. I find that once I understand something well enough that I can teach it to someone else, there's just magic that happens. And that's one of the things I love about StoryBrand. There's the idea embedded in that. As a business owner, you show up as the guide. You're not the hero of the story, you're the guide. And I feel like as a teacher, I've always been the guide. I've always been guiding my students toward a successful ending. And I just really love that I have the opportunity to help businesses do that, because you understand your own business and what you do at a level 10.
Yeah.
And people buy at one. And there's just a gap of knowledge that has to be overcome. And we use insider language. We confuse people. We want to tell everybody up front all the amazing things we do, when really we need to build that relationship through curiosity and through enlightenment, and then getting them to commit to work with us in our business. So.
Yeah, I one time was meeting with a business owner, and I wasn't saying this in relation to what your StoryBrand, but because this was just years and years ago. But I've used this over and over with a 6-year-old, keeping it simple, and he was in the tech space and things like that, and I said, okay, great, tell me about your business, and we were trying to clarify his competitive advantage, and he gave me this whole long gobbledygook, techno babble, and I was like, like if you were standing in front of a leads group, what would you say to introduce yourself? And he told that. And I said, okay, well, hold up. I know nothing about your industry. I got confused at word 9. So let me ask you a question. Do you have a son, daughter, niece, nephew, whatever, the age around 10? I think I picked 10. And he's like, yeah. I said, okay, so let's say that they come over to your house for a family event and they say, hey, uncle, whoever, what do you do for your job? What would you say? And he goes, oh, well, I just tell them that I help people, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's it right there. And he's like, oh, wow. And I think that, when you can frame it with how would you explain it to your niece or nephew, son, daughter, and then dive right back into you're not talking down to your target audience. You're just making sure they understand. And then once they do understand, now you can start reeling them in and putting a little bit more detail in there because you've got their attention. Is that something that you find too?
Absolutely, because I feel like marketing at the basic level, you're guiding people through an exercise of memorization. You're helping them memorize what it is you do, what problem it is that you solve. And when you can do that, when you can explain what you do to a 10-year-old, you can explain that to someone at a cocktail party. And even if they don't need your product or service right then, they can turn around and explain it at that same level to someone who might. If they understand it right away, oh, you do tech services for this? My uncle needs that. Let me go tell him about that. And you're speaking in terms of solving that problem, and we all want our problem solved. We all want that kind of help. So, yeah, I think that's a great practical tip to just get started helping clarify what you do.
Yeah, and you mentioned too problem, and how many times have we seen on Shark Tank where one of the sharks says, "Hold up, what problem does this solve? I don't need a thing I put in my mouth and lick my cat. I don't need licky brush. I don't. Where's the problem there? It's a novelty, yeah, I get it, but where's the big widespread problem? And I think that's a really, really big piece to keep in mind, because if you don't have a really big problem, why are you bothering unless you just want to be super, super niche? And there's a place for that. But speak a little bit about the aspect of finding a problem and really kind of working all around the problem to kind of frame the solution you provide.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that we don't love to talk about problems. It feels negative. It feels manipulative sometimes. But the reality is, if there's not a problem to solve, there's not a business. We're in the business of solving people's problems. We're selling solutions to a problem. We're giving them aspirin for their headache. And in terms of, if you think about it in terms of a movie, say a narrative that's really easy to understand, if the bomb's not going to explode, if there's not some problem that the main character needs to solve, the movie's over. We don't care anymore. And if we don't solve a problem, if we don't tell people, if we can't share succinctly and clearly what problem we solve for our customers don't need to do business with us. But if we know, there's a problem, there's something getting in the way of what they want, there's a problem, that makes them feel a certain way, we can speak to those problems in our marketing when we're talking to people. We invite them into that story of working with our business and being transformed. In terms of making sure you help people find a problem, I think the best entrepreneurs are those who scratch their own itch, in a manner of speaking. They've experienced a problem. They've come up with a solution, and they share it with other people who have that same problem. Those are the businesses that I see that are successful. The ones, like you say, that go on Shark Tank. Like, this is a problem I had, and I needed to solve it.
Yeah.
And you can see that it's a problem for other people. There's a viable market there, but it's just some random thing you dreamed up in your garage, and you really don't know people have that problem. It just doesn't work. I had a client come to me about maybe a year ago that had an idea for a product that I sat and listened to her explain this product, and at the end of the conversation I said, I don't know if there's a problem here. Like it was something very, very specific. Like, and she was selling it. She wanted to sell it online. Like it was the kind of product that you could sell in a doctor's office to a very specific group of people who were experiencing this problem. And I actually had a friend who did experience the problem, and I called her and said, "Is this something you would want? Is this something you would need?" And she said, "Yes, absolutely." And I said, "Well, would you look for it online?" And she said, "No."
Wow.
If it was sitting at my doctor's office, then yes, I would see the connection between the problem I'm having and here I'm at the doctor's office with my child. And anyway, it's just really thinking through, was it just a good idea that I dreamed up and thought, oh, this is awesome, and then charged forward? Or is it really a problem that needs to be solved?
Well, and I think that brings up another point, which is where you're going to find the people that have that problem. And if, like in your example, it is not a vibrant online, need, then who are you going to align with as a strategic alliance to now take your clarified message to that, let's say, doctor's office in that scenario and go, hey, I specialize in boom, boom, boom. Your patients might need the same thing. Would we be able to discuss a potential strategic alliance where we both would benefit, however that would work out? And then now you've got, a strong strategic alliance, and you might, I think that sometimes when people hear that, they're like, yeah, but I could be selling to, Tom, Dick, and Harry, but, this is now one doctor. Yeah, well, one doctor has 20 Tom, Dick, and Harrys, a day coming through their office. And so you build up kind of that relationship, which works like a long-term annuity. It just keeps producing results.
Exactly. We see businesses, I work with small businesses, I work with authors, and it's really, there's a lot of resistance around going to the smallest viable market. Seth Godin talks about that a lot, especially in his new book, that there's a group of people that you're uniquely qualified to help, and you need to get the message out that you can solve their problem. And when you do that, you have people that will come to you. You just have to know where to find them and where to go. And once you do, you've got, they've got friends that have that same problem, and it just grows and grows. And it's just really fascinating that as business owners starting out, we think we need to change the entire world. Yeah. Where if we can find 1,000 true fans, like Kevin Kelly talks about, like, because I work with a lot of authors, they get really anxious about not having a big following, not having a big list. But if they've got a group of people that are like totally devoted to them, anything that they sell, if that author has provided so much value in advance through their writing, through what they're teaching online, either on social media or through online courses or whatever, anytime you show up with a new product, if you've provided value for somebody, if you've solved their problem in the past, they're going to buy from you again. Yeah. They're going to be part of that.
If you've done it the right way, because, harkening back to Seth Godin in his book, Tribes, you need to have that tribe that you wrap your arms around and say, what do you need? And then that becomes your best crowd sourcing, place to get ideas from. Like the crowd or your tribe is going, ooh, it'd be nice if. And then you can listen to them and provide that. So I think, even think about this. Let's say that someone has that tribe of you're an author and people are following you or whatever that it is. Having that clear message is still vitally important, because I know way back in the day, I was in the banking business and worked with realtors, and you would have a realtor get so frustrated with, the Johnsons called me and said, come over to my new house. And I'm like, what? And got all perturbed with them. And they're like, what? You helped me, sell my house last time, but this one I bought. So I didn't know you did both sides of the transaction. Well, they weren't clear in what they provided, and I think that's really, really, kind of like marketing 101, marketing foundations, message to market, because everything else stems from that. So that leads me to my question, which is, once the marketing message is clarified and really, really solidified, what then are you able to do with that? Whoop-de-doo that you've got a clear message, and it goes on my website, great, but then what?
Yeah, it for sure goes on a website. And one of the things I teach, I work with my clients on, is developing what we call in StoryBrand a one-liner, a succinct statement. It's very similar to an elevator pitch. It's much shorter. Talks about what problem you solve, what success looks like, and what the plan is for them. So when someone comes up and asks what you do, you have an answer ready to go, and it very clearly says what you do. That's one way to use it. In your sales calls, we go through, when I start working with a client, we go through and clarify that message, and we change it into a couple of different forms. We change it into an actual story. That can be an opening, email when someone downloads a free PDF from your website. You can put that paragraph on your website. You can unify your whole sales team around this idea and the problem you solve. There's lots and lots of ways to use that message, because so often companies may have an amazing product or service, but if they don't know how to explain what they do, what problem they solve, no one's going to do business with them. It's the clearest message that wins the day. It's not necessarily the best product that wins the day at the end of the day.
Yeah. Hey, so can you think of an example from a client, without mentioning names or whatever, but, before and after? Like, hey, before their message was just all over the place, and after we clarified it and we did these things and they're now experiencing this. What does that look like?
Yeah. So the author that I mentioned earlier, that I went to the StoryBrand workshop with in the first place, had a really great, following online, especially on LinkedIn. She published great articles. People really liked following her, but she hadn't taken that that following, I guess, and brought them over to her website ever. She was just interacting with them on social. And so the first thing we did was clean up her website a little bit. And ironically, I'd actually designed her first website. And her website just had a picture of her book and a bunch of blurbs, and didn't really talk about what problem she solved, didn't talk about how the book was going to make a difference. And she had a new book coming out. And so we went through and created created this brand script. And on the website, the way that we translated that story is, right at the top of the website, you knew right away what problem she helped you solve. It said something like helping you become the business leader that people want to work for. She works with people in creating stronger teams and leadership and development and things like that. So, I want to be the boss that people want to work for. And when I read something like that, this is the person that can help me do it. And, there's a call to action that's very clear in the upper right-hand corner that you need to buy her book, or you need to schedule an appointment to be coached by her. The other thing we did with that is created a PDF that people could download. If they weren't ready to buy the book, if they weren't ready to schedule an appointment to work with her, to talk about working with her, they could at least download this PDF and see what she was about and experience, what she was about. And we designed it in a way so that it would provide them value in advance, draw them a little bit closer into her tribe, move at the speed of relationship to get them a little bit more enlightened about what she does. And we were able to build her email list. She also created a quiz, like an assessment that you could take. And we love to find out about ourselves. We love to know more about ourselves. And it was all around her content. And so she has a podcast. She shared on the podcast every week that you could take this assessment, you could download this PDF. And she went from having 3,000 people on her website, or not on her website, on her email list a year and a half ago, to now I believe she's pushing 25,000. Wow. Her online presence has grown on all of these social media platforms as well. And her business is really thriving. And we've built this platform around this message. And the way she executes it is, every week she's producing content for free that provides value to people through her podcast. She emails her newsletter list, something that provides value specifically to them, lets them know about the podcast. We're posting on social media about that message, about how she helps every day, not just how she specifically helps, but other pieces of other people's content that will be helpful to the people that follow her. So she's not just talking about herself all the time. She's setting herself up as a guide and saying, hey, if you're experiencing this problem, this other article we found, this quote, this other piece of content might help you as well. And as she does that, there's just this virtuous cycle where her platform continues to grow and grow and grow. She's speaking more than she ever has before. She's commanding higher speaking fees. She's got another book coming out that she's starting in the next month or so. It's just been really amazing to watch the power of having a message that people resonate with and gathering those people in through the way she's sharing her content every week. But I've seen that happen with tons of people through their product as well. Like even if you're a lawn mowing business, helping people understand that the problem you solve is, they have a great looking lawn and their neighbor's not side-eyeing them as they leave for work every day. You don't have to be embarrassed about this lawn that looks terrible. We'll come and solve that problem for you. Here's how we do it. And here's the success you'll experience. And here's the failure you're experiencing if you don't hire us as your lawn service provider. Just getting clear around even something like that can make such a big difference in your business.
Yeah, I think I loved all those examples. You're like, well, you can add it here, put it there. And I think the thing that people need to realize when they hear that is it's not just checking off the boxes. You don't just go, I tweaked this and I added that. It's got to be repetitive and resist the urge that I keep saying the same, one line or the same elevator pitch over and over in my communications, but that has to be done for your audience to really pick up on the full clarity of the message, repetition. And you might have a new person that listened to that podcast and they're only hearing it for the first time. So don't ever give up on using that clear message over and over in all your marketing, right?
Yeah, you can't. It really is an exercise in memorization. People have to hear things, 8 times before they metabolize something to the point they'll buy it. And to get them to that 8 times, who knows how many times you have to repeat it? Thousands and thousands and thousands of times. If you're really committed as a business to solving that problem, that's something you're willing to do. And when you have a clear message, it's so much easier to explain it because you have that message ready to go.
Yeah. And I would even say, I've heard that, that 8 times or 7 or 9 or whatever the number ends up to be for decades, right? But I would say that given in the technology digital age we're in, that really it's whatever number you want to think of times 3 or 4 or 5, because we're so distracted and we've got text message this and busyness that and Facebook message and Instagram that it might take that, back in the day, it might take 7 or 8 times, but now it might take 2 or 3 times to count as one because our target audience is so busy. They don't really get what our message is, and you might need to go 2 or 3 times. Okay, there's the one, and we have to remember that people get distracted.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And it's funny, too, there's often resistance to using that clear language, like you said, that language that you can use to explain it to a 10-year-old. We want to be unique as a business. We want to make sure that people understand that we bring something unique to the table in solving that problem. But if you're not clear, I'll back up. So I worked with some technology companies earlier this week. I was actually in Nashville at the StoryBrand Live workshop, helping coach. And I had at my table some folks who create software for companies. And they've been creating websites. Now they're like an all-in-one software solution. If you have an idea to create a piece of software, they can not only create it for you, they can help you bring it to market. They can put together a sales team. It's a really great service. But the way they had their website, they were using a lot of technical jargon, a lot of things that if you were hiring someone to create software, you would need to know that they knew. But they had it at the top of their site. And I talked to them a lot about, yes, people need to know these things, but they don't need to know them up here at the top. They need to understand what it is you do, what problem you solve. Because the CTO isn't necessarily going to be the one that lands on your website. It might be a secretary that's been charged with, researching this problem. And yes, maybe there are lots of other software development companies that can help you as a one-stop solution to create your software, but they're not saying that, and you are, and that gives you a competitive advantage. So your willingness to be clear, your willingness to meet people where they are and move them forward toward a sale at the speed of relationship is going to make all the difference in the world compared to your competitor.
Yeah, that's huge. Well, hey, Macy, let's wrap up with what is the best way that someone can reach out, connect with you, and maybe test out and see if they need their message clarified. Absolutely. So the best way to find me is on my website, which is Uplight, UPLIGHT, creative.com, uplightcreative.com. I'm on social as well. Macy Robison, my name is where I share a lot of that stuff because I do some speaking and some other things as well. But Uplight Creative is the best place to get in touch with me, and I'm happy to hop on a call and see if I can be of help. That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was great getting to know you. Yeah, great to chat with you. Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.